America is just miles and miles where you can bury bodies, interrupted by cities that supply them.
Hi there, I am Pratikshya Mishra and you're listening to Do I Like It? A Quint production where we review anything and everything under the sun. And in this episode, I will tell you if I like Veer Das Landing, his new Netflix comedy special. What does he talk about in Landing? He talks about his experiences growing up as an Indian kid. He talks about just Indianness, the Indian identity, makes some jokes about that, talks about queer and trans people for a bit in there, talks about how his past few years have looked, especially after the controversy surrounding his poem that he performed at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., if I'm not wrong, called Two Indias. In doing so, he gives us an insight into just the idea of how comics talk about cancel culture, okay? I mean, come on. There are people accused of sexual assault getting Grammy nominations. So clearly they weren't exactly cancelled. What Veer Das talks about in his special is how his special Two Indias irked a lot of people in this country, and that led to a police complaint against him and his career essentially being on the verge of being finished. He felt like he was done, that was it, that was the performance that would truly push him off the map. Before getting into this further, I want to tell you that you can check out our other episodes and other podcasts from the Quint on our website or wherever you get your podcasts from. Let's continue talking about Veer Das Landing. Right, so he's talking about all of this, right? It's an interesting insight into the comedy scene in India as well. They were talking about how people outside are like, oh, why don't Indian comics push the envelope? And he's like, we opened the envelope, and that's pretty funny. It's pretty funny as a comic bit. What is also funny is when he kind of compares the way comics are critiqued and is like, oh, why, what if spiritual leaders were critiqued that way? That was also a pretty funny bit. There is, of course, a lot of talk about privilege. He talks about how privilege can be shifting in India. I don't think that privilege can shift as much as in India. There are so many things that could kind of factor into your privilege. It could be your economic status, your sexual identity, your gender identity, your caste, your religious identity. There's so much going on. And sure, in that sense, your privilege can be shifting. What's funny is that, it's not funny as much as ironic, is that Das doesn't seem to be self-aware about the privilege that he already has, or rather, it doesn't come across in his writing. Maybe he is aware of his privilege. He is talking about privilege so much, so I'm sure he's aware of his privilege, but in the writing, it doesn't come across. And that kind of is one of the weaker parts of Veer Das's Landing. What I would, however, appreciate is that the jokes all seem kind of very well written and very well placed, in the sense that that this joke was written for this moment. Even when he says there's a scene where he's improving, it's pretty fun because he brings back an earlier joke, he brings back multiple earlier jokes. So you can see that he has truly structured these jokes properly. And of course, there's the whole bit with the soil that he reveals in the end. That was also pretty funny. And in hindsight, you're like, of course, that's what's happening, because why not? And that's the thing about Veer Das. I think when Veer Das is talking about Veer Das, the special is the funniest. It's very earnest also. He talks about his problems that he faced when he was effectively, quote unquote, cancelled because of all the criticism. When you're not exactly like being hateful towards someone, and yet your content or you don't find access to your work, I feel like that is maybe closer to what some people term cancel culture than anything else. And all these jokes have been made before also, with like comedians like Superwoman used to do it on her channel. Lily Singh used to do it on her channel for a while ago. Many Indian comics continue to do it. Prashasti Singh, for example, continues to do it. So yeah, we've heard all the jokes about the Indian existence, but I guess they're still pretty funny. I mean, never stops being funny. The trauma of an Asian household really holds its humor for a while, huh? But yeah, that's nothing much. But you also see some influences of maybe like Daniel Sloss in his comedy. Shout out to my friend Mohana Soman, who pointed this out and was very upset that I did not credit this idea to her originality, but I'm crediting it here. I remember when Veerdas was called out for saying something transphobic in one of his earlier acts, not this one. There was a separate act, he was called out for it. And I remember he apologized and said that, he was willing to learn. And I appreciate that in a comic. I have never really been a Veerdas fan as such, but I can still appreciate that this is someone who is willing to be like, hey, okay, I didn't know about this and now I am going to learn. And it does seem like he has a better understanding of that particular subject now. But surely there's still, when you're hearing the joke, the feeling that, he probably doesn't understand it very well just still comes across. So that also is a bit... it's the writing in those parts, for example, isn't as strong as others. Because I don't know, say comics like Mae Martin or Hannah Gatsby will give you a much better comic set about queer and trans lives, because the experiences that they're speaking from and the experiences that we're speaking from is very, very different. Some parts of Veerdas Landing are a little immature. It is not my style of comedy, but if I leave my personal preferences behind, I think I can appreciate the value of those jokes. Again, like I said, very Daniel Sloss. But yeah, he's best when he's doing that. Many a times in the screen, you're like, "Ooh, are you allowed to say that, dude?" But then I don't know, you be the judge. मैं किसके behalf पे offense लूँ. But yeah, I think those are all my thoughts about Veerdas Landing. You should share yours on my social media. Get in touch with me. Tell me what you thought about Veerdas Landing or what you thought about anything you watched this week, this month, this year. I am all ears and I love to listen to your thoughts. But yeah, do I like Veerdas Landing? Kinda do, kinda don't. Some pieces very fun, some not my beat. But I guess that's how a lot of comedy sets go. That was all for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Do I Like It is a Quint production, executive produced by Ritu Kapoor and Shelly Walia, hosted by me, Pratikshya Mishra, produced and edited by Anjali Palod, with music from Netflix and BMG Production. See you next time.
You were listening to the Quint's podcast.